Okay, welcome to another episode of Mark My Words, the podcast where I interview business entrepreneurs, charity founders, and interesting guests about their insights into their business life and work. Today, I'm very pleased we've got Fiona Morgan joining us from Morgan's Wills and Trust. Hello, Fiona, how are you doing?
Hi Mark, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And of course, we've known each other for many years in different guises, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point. So, first of all, could you just sort of tell us a bit about who you are and what your current role entails, please?
Yep, so I'm Fiona and I own Morgan Wills and Trusts. And so we're a estate planning practice based in Sheffield, but we cover South Yorkshire to give people an option of doing their estate planning either at home or online, whichever suits them best.
Brilliant. And I'll ask you a few more questions about what that means and delving into that a bit later. But first of all, I know you've had quite a varied career today, which I'm really interested in. You've worked in different industries, both as an employee, but also setting up your own business. So can you tell us a little bit about the sort of different things you've done and the journey you've been on?
Yeah, so when I first left uni, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, isn't it? You've got your degree, but it doesn't necessarily lend you to a career or an option. But I did know I wanted to stay in Sheffield, like lots of people do when they finish uni, they like Sheffield, so they stay here. And so I ended up working for a property developer. And during that time, I found that actually I liked baking much more than I did property developing. And I used to bake for the builders merchants and the scaffolders and all sorts. And in return, we got some very good pricing because, of course, they were well looked after. So on a whim, I decided to buy a cafe in Rotherham. And it's one of these things where I hadn't really thought anything through. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. So I was only in my 20s at the time, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to do lots of things that you wouldn't necessarily get to do in your career, like managing a large team, negotiation, your ordering, your accounts, all that sort of stuff that you have to suddenly learn how to do when you're self-employed. And I had that for 4.5 years, employed some lovely people that worked for me, and we had a laugh, but it was, my gosh, it was hard work. You're open 7 days a week, you're up early in the morning. And as you know, at 2 o'clock when the cafe closed, you still had all your other jobs to do with running a business. And so I thought I'd keep it for 3 years, just so I could get that experience. But at 3 years, an opportunity came to buy out a competitor. So I did that instead, kept it for another year, and then sold thereafter. And I'd been done with being self-employed then, I think, and the pressure of salaries and staff and looking after everybody else first. And there was a program running in Sheffield called the Rise program. It still runs at the moment, and it's all about keeping graduates in Sheffield for small and medium sized things. And we ran an event for them, which I think you were possibly at for Junior Chamber. And there was a real good buzz in the room, and it was amazing. And I thought, I want to be part of this. So I got one of the Rise jobs in the next cohort and had a change to being employed in export sales. And I stayed in that for many years. And I never thought I'd leave it really. Got promoted, changed companies a few times, but in the end was running quite a large export team. And then, of course, Brexit and COVID hit at the same time, which was miserable for generally, but in export sales, it was particularly miserable. And before we'd even gone into lockdown, we were chatting to customers in Italy who were in lockdown about how it was working and what shopping they could do. And everything just seemed so strange. And everything in the UK was saying this isn't going to happen to us. And all we could think was it's definitely happening to us. Italy's not that far away in the scheme of things. And so I thought at that point, if I was going to do anything else and change career, that was the time to do it because you'd have time to study, extra money because you weren't going out and all your hobbies and things weren't happening. So I enrolled then to retrain at the start of lockdown. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to work for someone again or be self-employed, but it seemed like too good an opportunity not to go back to self-employment and have a bit more flexibility about working hours, as well as the extra stress that you get from being self-employed as well.
Wow. And what sort of things did you export in that business?
So I worked for a lovely company on Hellaby Industrial Estate, and they exported power transmissions, which
Okay.
for people that don't understand what that is, and I'm not sure I entirely understand, but it's bearings, belts, drives, couplings, that sort of stuff. And they did supply things to toilet roll manufacturers. So in lockdown, things were quite busy for some of the manufacturers. Food manufacturing plants were our clients, but all around the
Yeah.
world we looked after for that. So a good
Wow. So
opportunity.
you've literally gone from like flapjacks, cakes, and wraps to power transformers to
Yeah,
then estate planning wills. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that's it.
What a journey. What a
Over
journey.
the space of quite a few years.
Yeah. And we'll come on to a little bit more about what estate planning means and what you do now. But thank you for that. I find that really fascinating, and I guess it kind of shows one for me, and knowing you, Fiona, that kind of enthusiasm, that energy, that willing to push yourself out of your comfort zones and try different opportunities. And then something also about using those transferable skills and also a willingness to learn. Um, yeah, hats off to you. Nice one. So, thinking from your perspective as a business owner and entrepreneur, then, what
Yeah.
advice would you give somebody thinking of setting up their own business?
So I had this interestingly with a client I was chatting to a few weeks ago. She's not working at the moment. I think she's got three children under four, I think, something along those lines. But she's thinking of going self-employed. So I was thinking, how can I help her? Because she's got a lot on. It would make a real difference to her life if she could set up a really successful business for her and her children's future. And my best bit of advice was to get advice, I think. So there's lots of free advice available in South Yorkshire, and I'm sure it's the same in other places, that the local council have funded programs that will help you with training, and they run programs on everything from setting up to how to do your own books to when do I need to VAT register, and you can have a mentor and someone to help with your marketing. And that for me at the start was really, really helpful. And this lady did get back in touch to say she's actually doing it. She was so excited. She'd been in touch, she'd been on a course, she'd had some support, had a call from somebody, and she was going to go for it. And I think without that, it would have been much harder for her. They're really there to support you.
Yeah, good. And I totally agree. And from my perspective, I do a lot of that business startup stuff, and I think there's so much practical stuff to think about. Then there's that kind of how do you keep her positive and enthusiastic and self motivated, and then what are the pitfalls? What do you need? And then something about it can be quite isolating as well, can't it? So
Absolutely, yeah.
how do you learn and bounce off each other? Cool, lovely, thank you. So thinking about networks, then, how important would you say is having a strong network and creating a strong network and maintaining a network is to your business? Because again, you're somebody that strikes me as quite well networked and very good at making and maintaining relationships.
Oh, thank you. So for me, it's everything. So when I look at where my clients come from, for the first year, it all came from a network. After the first year, it started to come from existing clients who are then referring their brothers, sisters, someone they've chatted to in the playground. But still, the majority of my work comes from the people that I network with, that wider community that you've got. So for me, it's absolutely everything. And it's worth investing time in because of the
Mhm.
return from it. So it's worth the effort of keeping in touch with people.
And have you got any tips on how you do that or what works for
I
you?
think it is that keeping in touch with people. So it's like we call it constant contact, but I don't mean you pestering them every day. But if an article comes up and I think, oh, that would be interesting read to such and such a person, or that might affect their industry, I'll send it on to them as a way of keeping in touch with them and trying to help them out
Mhm.
along the way. So it is that sort of always remembering them. And it's little things like someone who's referred me some work recently, she's moving house next weekend. So I've got a little reminder to wish her good luck and that everything goes smoothly. So I think it's those little things that people actually appreciate because you've taken the time to understand them and not just what they can do for you,
Yeah,
but what
brilliant.
you can do for them as well.
Good, thank you. Love that. So thinking about the estate planning part of what you do now,
Yeah.
um, like what is it and why is it important for people, individuals, families?
Yeah, so estate planning covers lots of things, but the main two things in there are wills and lasting powers of attorney, and that's what I spend a lot of my time talking to clients about. And really, whatever stage you are in your life, there's a reason why that would be important to you. So if you own a business, you want to make sure that that business is protected. It's like a baby to you, isn't it? You've worked hard, you've spent
Yeah.
hours, put a lot of money and effort into it. And so it's about making sure that's protected, but also the people that work for you, that they would be protected if the worst happened to you to make sure that you're not leaving sort of a mess behind or affecting anybody else's life. And if you've got family, obviously they're your other babies, even no matter how old your children are, they're still your babies. And it's about making sure that they're protected as well. But it is the only way to make sure that your wishes are carried out and not what the government decides. So, really important for people to know that their wishes are going to be carried out.
Mm. And in a lay person's term, can you explain what power of attorney is, please?
Oh, yes. So power of attorney, we get this quite a lot, and Martin Lewis is quite keen on it at the moment. So I've lasting powers of attorney. There's two for each person, so you end up with two documents, and they're about 20 pages long each when they come through. So expect lots of post. And so there's one for health and welfare and one for property and finance. And it means that you can choose who it is that you'd like to help you with your affairs if you just need a bit of extra help at any point in the future, or if there was a situation in the future where you did lose mental capacity, even if it's only temporarily. It puts you in charge of what decisions they can make and make sure that you're choosing somebody that you trust or someone that's got similar values to you. So they're going to easily be able to think, what would that person want in that situation? What would be the best thing for them? So it makes sure that you're looked after.
So things like, presumably, heavens forbid, if somebody was involved in an accident and was in intensive care, or if somebody, had dementia or something like that, if they've got that in place before that happens,
Yes.
those nominated people can act
Those are
legally for them.
Yeah, so they can take over and they have to be spoken to as if they are that person. So they can gather all the information. So if it's a medical decision to make, the doctors, etc., would give them all the information and then they can help that person make that decision or make it on their behalf. And hopefully when they've done the lasting powers of attorney, they've done it where you give some guidance. So lots of people have lots of wishes then. So that makes it easier for that person making a decision. With the property and finance one, it's the same thing. They could have access to your bank account so they can buy you new slippers, make sure your bills are paid. But if there was a problem, like your phone line went down, that person would be able to speak to BT as if they are you. So it can take that stress away from you to make sure it gets sorted.
Brilliant, thank you. And I guess, sometimes people don't like talking about these subjects, do they? Because they think they're like preempting it or a bit superstitious or anything. Are there any other common misconceptions that people have, would you say, about estate planning that you've come across?
Yeah, so we do get the odd superstitious one, like I write my will and I'm going to die straight away. I mean, that hasn't happened yet. I guess the odds are that there's one time that might happen in the future, but it hasn't happened to anybody that hasn't had a terminal diagnosis on the superstitious front. There's lots of common misconceptions. So people just assume everything will go to their husband and their kids, so they might not need to do a will, but that's not always the case, depending on what happens. Lots of people don't realise that if you get married, it does revoke any will that you've previously written. So that's quite a big one.
Mm.
So lots of people get married sometimes for the second time, maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they don't realise then it's just revoked the wills that they've had their whole life. And so sometimes that means that they've accidentally disinherited their own children, which isn't what they want. So I do speak about that a lot to try and educate people that, once you've got engaged and you're celebrating, give me a quick call afterwards and then we can make sure everything's okay for you. So, yeah, that happens all too often.
Mhm. Wow, lots to think about. And what would you say is the most challenging aspects then for people that you work with when it comes to thinking about and discussing planning their estates?
Yeah, so lots of them don't want to talk about it because I am going to be talking about, we play this horrible game of if this person dies before you, where would you want it to go? And if they've already died, where would you want it to go? So we do have to ask some really tough questions, but we try to make it as relaxed environment as possible. And we use them in with nice things like name, address, date of birth to start with. So we're on a roll through to the more difficult questions. But a lot of the time it's that they can't agree or they don't know what they want. So that makes it more difficult then. But at least if they've had a chat, they know what the options available are. So at least then they're basing it on actual options and not just thinking it through without any guidance
Mhm,
at all. And for that reason, sometimes I set people homework after meetings for things that they need to go away and think about so they're not on the spot to make a decision
mhm.
for that way. But yeah, sometimes that can be a little bit awkward between couples.
Thank you. Have you got any, and again, I appreciate confidentiality stuff. Are there any sort of stories in mind that you can tell us, either that have been really helpful to have had sort of, I want to say protection, that's probably the wrong word, but plans in place, or equally some stories where there haven't been, and the consequences to
Yeah,
that.
so obviously I can give you an example of my dad because that's a nice, easy one. I don't think I'm breaking any confidentiality talking about him on that one. So he sadly had a stroke at the start of this year, and it was a few days before they realised he'd had a stroke. So luckily it wasn't too serious. And so he went into hospital, and they've got two hospitals, 20 minutes either way when you get to the village. You turn left, you get one, right, you get the other. So they turned, my mum decided she'd go to the one where it's easier to park, because we all know that's the biggest nightmare, isn't it? When
Mm,
you go to the hospital, is where do you park? So she decided she'd go to that one. So they worked out what happened to him and that he'd need to go to the specialist stroke unit, which of course was at the other hospital. After 24 hours, he's still in A&E in a resus ward and not at the specialist stroke unit. My mum, who would normally be all over this, is obviously tired, emotionally distressed, not the usual butting in, getting everything sorted person she normally is. So I was setting off through the Peak District saying, remember, you've got your lasting powers of attorney in place. They can speak to you or me or my brother and sister. So I remember driving through the Peak District thinking, this isn't right. He needs to be moved to the specialist stroke unit. Uh, with the lasting power of attorney sat on my passenger seat. And as it turns out, we didn't need it. They moved him as I was halfway there. But it gave a bit of peace of mind that we could instigate that for him if it wasn't happening, because he wasn't able to make that decision himself at that time. So we
mm,
sort of had good days and bad days. But during the bad days, we did use the lasting powers of attorney to help him out. And now he's doing all right. We don't need them again now, hopefully not for a long time, but very grateful that they were there uh, in the first instance.
thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Um, excuse me. How can individuals ensure their estate plans remain up to date and reflective of their current wishes over time, would you say?
Yeah, so it's difficult. Lots of people say, oh, I wrote my will 30 years ago, got it done. And you think, gosh, has their life not changed significantly at all in 30 years? That's got to be impossible, hasn't it? So it depends. Lots of people, such as myself, will ring clients every 3 years, just a little catch up. Is everything still the same? Yep, speak to you in 3 years. Or they say, oh, no, actually, we've had grandchildren, we've bought a house in France, and my son's got divorced. Right, in which case we might have a little look over it and see if it's still right or not. But generally, it's if anything major happens in your life, that's a good time to have a review. So marriage, divorce, children, grandchildren, buying property, they're sort of your big life moments, aren't they? So that's a good time to then, once you finish celebrating that moment, have a little check that your will still reflects those wishes for you and that nothing's changed. Lots of people, when they get grandchildren, do decide that they prefer their grandchildren to the children. They're much more fun. And so want to make sure that there's some provision for them as well in their will, which is nice.
Brilliant. I'm like, if I get another cat, I'd want to leave it to the cats anyway.
Absolutely.
So started off kind of saying that we've known each other for a while. I think it must have been probably met back about 2011, something like that, when we
I
both
think so,
joined
yeah.
JCI, the Junior Chamber International. So, can you sort of tell us a little bit about what JCI was, and how that helped on your journey?
Yeah, so I first joined Junior Chamber International. So that's for people under 40, so 18 to 40-year-olds. So unfortunately, not me anymore. Um,
Not me.
and no, and they offered quite a few things, but a lot of it was personal development stuff aimed at people at the starts of their careers or just moving up to sort of management levels. And it surrounded me with lots of people that were doing the same thing. So lots of other people self-employed, or lots of other people that were sort of climbing the ladder at work. And it really gave me a good network of like-minded people for support, as well as the training that they gave. And I remember that they did training once on how to run a meeting. I thought, this is a bit of a random one, but my word, you use it all the time, all the
Yeah,
time. So there's things I still do there, and still several really good friends that I've still got from Junior Chamber from that. So yeah, a really, really good way of being supported by other people when you're setting your business up.
excellent. Thank you. And on that sort of younger narrative, I suppose, if you could go back and give yourself a key piece of advice to your younger self, what would that be, do you think?
I think it would be just to take the chance, whatever it is, whether it's work or personal life, just take that chance, because you start worrying and thinking about all the different scenarios, don't you? What ifs? But actually,
Mm,
it'd be easier if you just did it. got
Yeah.
on with it, you'd save so much time if you were just a bit braver to start with.
Yeah. And say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, just say yes.
Love it. Love it. Is there anything else you want to say at all or tell us about what you currently do or any other hints and tips at all?
I'm just trying to think. The other thing that people quite often don't realise is that if something happens to both parents of children under 18, so there's some horrible accident for both parents, without guardians in your will, they will take your children into the care system whilst the courts decide who would look after them. So that's why I try to educate people when they're having children as much as possible, because just making even the most straightforward of will with guardians in would stop that from
Right.
happening.
Okay. Yeah. Good tip. Thank you. Okay. Anything else at all?
No, I think that's everything.
Lovely. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you what if there's anything you want to ask me, and
Oh
as always, I
yeah.
don't know what's coming. But if people are listening and think, actually, yeah, you're talking a lot of sense, Fiona, and they'd like to have a chat with you, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Morgan Wilson Trust on the website, or if you put that into Google, I'm sure it'll bring up all of the social media. I offer an online 30-minute chat where we can chat things through with no obligations. That's a good chance to come on and find out what your options are. And then you can go away and chat and work out what's best for you before booking in.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. So, is there anything you would like to ask me?
So I had two questions in mind, so I'm a bit tall.
Oh,
Can I do two? Is that
yeah, go
cheeky?
for it, go for it.
What made you set up the podcast?
Oh, that's quite an easy one. So, during lockdown, I worked with a social media coach, um, and he was employed for a company. Now he's got his own company, Elliot Garley, who runs Example Marketing. So I would really rate him. Look him up. And he was my first guest on the podcast, and he really was encouraging me to use it as a way of helping to share tips, advice, insights and as well as building that kind of thought leadership and that credibility, I think. So I was a very big technophobe back then, particularly when it comes to this. And as you can tell, this isn't highly polished or produced. It's done on Zoom, and then we'll edit it and put it on YouTube and Spotify, etc. But yeah, it's had quite a good reaction, I think. So yeah, I enjoy it as well.
Good. Oh, and then my second question, because we like to be a little bit cheeky and push the boundaries, is what on earth made you decide to carry on doing stand-up and putting yourself out there in front of so many people on stage?
Now you've just outed my
I
stand-up
have. I did wonder if
career.
it was common knowledge on the podcast, so clearly not until now.
No, I think similar to what you said, actually, kind of always say yes, push yourself, things like you were saying earlier. And I quite enjoy it as much as sometimes it can feel a bit terrifying, that whole public speaking thing, trying to write stuff that's funny. It's a new challenge, it's a different audience, and it's using those public speaking skills in a very different way that I've learned through junior chamber. I'm not sure JCI would approve of me using it for that purposes, but yeah, I do enjoy it. And I think it's that balance as well, kind of, doing something fun and creative. So yeah, good questions.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Fiona, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you very much for
Um,
having me.